welcome back, guys, to our third episode of Afternoon Beat on this lovely Thursday afternoon. Hope you've all been well. Hope you've had a good week. Thanks for all the interaction the past week with the comments and feedback we've had from the podcast. It's been great. Still waiting for a jingle. I think we're going to be waiting weeks for that, to be quite honest. But we move. We'll see how that goes.
Louis, this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. But hope you've all been well. Today we have the wonderful Fran hosting, so I'm going to hand over to Fran to tell us what we'll be speaking about today.
Hey, thank you, Louis. So really today I was quite interested in this big old shift that we're in right now, which is that back to business, carry on, what's next. And I think that's probably sparked by the fact that the UK non-essential shops have opened this week and just seeing how people have reacted to that. And I was probably most interested in the fact that we'll have a little bit of a lag in reaction in terms of getting past the point of mad discounts and people queuing up and thinking about how the customer might have changed through this whole process and thinking about how different possibly our expectations as customers or even our buying behaviours maybe or our lifestyles, which affects our buying behaviours, might have changed since the beginning of this. So that's kind of where I wanted to drive this conversation, was thinking about us as customers, but also with our kind of mindset on the idea of the consumer as well. So first of all, I kind of wanted to post out the question of, has anyone had already an experience of a different buying habit? They've bought something they wouldn't normally buy, or they've, maybe bought less, or something's changed about their buying habits.
Yeah, I'll step into the arena on that one. I think mainly as a mum of two girls and a partner and a household, my shopping bill has suddenly gone, that's the focus. That's the whole focus of the week. Yeah. So, we used to do weekly shops anyway, but now it's like breakfast, lunch and dinner and snacks. And, it sounds, it's all food related for every single person in the house. And that's all got to arrive on one day in one load. And I think that was the biggest focus. I haven't bought any clothes in this period. Not even for the girls, because stuff's getting too small for them. But we're just cropped leggings. And I think that was the biggest shift. Actually, it wasn't so much the change of what I wasn't doing. It was just the refocus. So there's definitely I haven't bought any clothes. I've sort of rejigged my wardrobe, I think, because suddenly, we're on screen a lot more. So I kind of was looking at things in different ways, I guess. I suppose the not feeling compelled to do all those activities, I think that's the biggest transition for me. So the kids would do quite a lot, and maybe I felt that we should be doing that and we shouldn't be doing that. But they had some great sort of stuff online, but suddenly that whole sort of slowdown of they don't need it, type thing, extra sort of curriculum activities, all that kind of thing. So I think that was my focus in terms of as a consumer. I think that's the biggest shift. It was just the repotting of everything. Yeah. And obviously not going out for coffee and croissants, And hey, it's up there on my top 5 things to do, people. It's like we've got frozen ones, so it's fine. We do them at home. But it's things like that. And thank goodness Jim got the nice coffee machine for Christmas. So it's things. It's things like that we would normally do. Living in London, which I think you'll probably come back to later on. But that living in London, sort of, is all part of that sort of transient movement of you pop out for lunch, you pop out for coffee, and all of that. That's very different now.
Thing, though, isn't it? That is that idea of food as an experience, and that maybe that's changed as well as how maybe we think about home food as an experience, and maybe that's where the baking things come from, and the idea that we've got to interact more with our food because we're not going out to restaurants or something. I don't know, but it's an interesting one, isn't it? That's like a big priority shift, I think.
Yeah, I think so, because normally you would go out because, you're going to experience the food, but suddenly, Yeah, so I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, and also because we're not kind of you know, if we were going to work, we were going out, we're walking past shops and we're walking past cafes and we're walking past these things every single day, you know, and we have, you know, and we'll see like lovely shop windows and think, oh, that's a lovely dress. Oh, that looks like a nice cake. I might just pop in on the way home and treat myself to a nice cake and eat that, you know. Or, you know, you see a dress and you know, and you didn't need it in your life, but all of a sudden it's kind of like, I need this in my life kind of thing. And I think because I found that I've not actively gone and walked down a high street with lots of kind of retail shops, that the prospect and the thought of buying has not really kind of, in terms of clothing, hasn't really come into my psyche, because I'm very, you know, I'm still quite old school. I still like to kind of go and look at shops and see stuff, you know, and visualize it and kind of think about it. And then I might buy it online, but the fact that I'm not getting that kind of activity in my life anymore, clothing shopping has not been top of my priorities. However, as I've kind of said before, you know, I've become quite functional in terms of what I bought over lockdown. You know, I bought myself a sewing machine. It's still in the box, but I am going to make my own kind of like it turned up like 3-4 weeks ago. It's like, yay! But you know, I am going to make my own face mask. It made me kind of think about other things that I can do, you know, and you know, the whole kind of COVID situation and transportation. It's like, you know, I don't really want to get on a bus. I don't want to get on the tube. So, and my friends keep saying to me, "Hey, come and meet us down in London Fields." I'm like, "Yeah, it's an hour and 15 minutes for me to walk to London Fields." So the other week, I basically went and bought myself a bike. But you know, and again, that was a really high value purchase, which usually I wouldn't ever kind of go, oh, I'm just going to go and buy a bike on a whim on a site, never seen it, you know, it's a reputable place, never seen it, never tried it, you know. Usually I'd go to a shop and get that experience, have a conversation, look at lots of bikes. But, you know, so my habits have changed in that way, that I've kind of taken more trust in the online system to kind of bring me what I need. And also the numerous numbers of TikTok likes, or whatever they're called, you know, these new Halo likes. I've got a little mobile one, and now I've got a big one because I'm spending a lot more time online, you know, talking to you guys and doing lectures, and needing to look like I've got a healthy glow going.
Yeah.
Don't give away our secret tactics.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's it now.
This is a natural glow, people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we always look like this.
But yeah, so I've not really bought any of the regular kind of stuff, and obviously copious amounts of food, you know. But I haven't really bought anything in terms of, you know, what's happening now the shop's open. I don't feel that desire or need to kind of run and stand in a queue. And I think that whole kind of thing around being conscious and considerate about my purchases, I think that has kind of come to the forefront now. It's kind of like, do I really need to stand in the queue? Apart from food, obviously I'm going to stand in that queue because I need to eat. But am I going to really stand in the queue for a dress or to try on some shoes? You know, and that is quite low down in my priorities. So,
yeah,
you know,
it's interesting. You bought things that are like you say, high value items, but actually you get a lot of, I don't know, use out of them as well. The whole point of them is it's like a lifestyle change, isn't it? Those ones, the sewing machine and the bike. That's like, I don't know. It's almost like those kind of purchases take you out of a system somehow. Like it can take you out of the fashion system because you can all of a sudden do stuff for yourself and you're not buying the masks. Yeah. But then also the bike, it takes you out of the transport system. So they're quite like empowering purchases as well in a way. You're kind of like going it alone kind of thing, which I quite like.
Definitely. And it's also kind of made me go, you know, if I've got the bike, then, you know, you know, I fair enough, I've got freedom anyway, but I feel like with the whole COVID situation and the transportation, I don't feel myself quite confident enough to be kind of, you know, sitting on a bus with lots of people at the moment. So for me, it's kind of like, it's giving me back my freedom. But also, at the same time, it's kind of like, God, Toyin, how much money are you saving every week by cycling everywhere that you need to go, so to speak? And that's really kind of made me kind of, think about things in that kind of perspective in terms of how much money, you know, fair enough, it cost me quite a bit of money for the bike, but the overall, you know, amount that it's cost me is, you know, it's benefiting my health, you know, money back in my pocket, you know, and a whole new lifestyle to kind of go with it. Just got to find a hat. So the thing is, if anybody out there, I'm going to put a call out there now, if anybody out there knows how to kind of design a helmet for black hair, please get in contact, because I bought everything, you know, for my bike. I bought a lovely pannier bag, I've got the mobile kind of bike hook, but the thing that I'm kind of got a mental block on is trying to find a hat, because they just don't make hats for black hair.
Oh man, this is the thing.
Well, there we go.
There we go,
There's
there's a
a
niche.
product.
Yeah.
Product.
There's
I like it.
anybody out there, any students that want to make this as a final year project, I'm literally, you know, your kind of your sample and your participant to engage with.
I love it. Gauntlet it down. Big challenge on, Toya. What about you, Louis?
Yeah.
I would same as Toyam really. I think I haven't bought anything in terms of, I don't want to say for the sake of it, but I think it comes back down to, now you speak about more this idea of value and being like a conscious consumer. Like before, similar to talking with the bike, I got a bike as well, just for the simple fact that I kind of wanted to keep up the idea of one daily exercise once a day. But then also, like Twain said, the wider value of, in terms of your health and your mental well-being, just getting out after a day of working at home or working wherever you are and being able to clear your head. So I think it adds, for me, it's added a different level of value. Whereas, okay, you're missing out on the opportunity to kind of, like Twain said, go to the store, look for a bike, talk about what you want in a bike. But it adds a different value because you can't do that. You're kind of waiting for it more. And because most of us are at home or wherever we're living, it's kind of, you haven't bought something online and then you're out with the rest of your day forgetting about it. You're kind of waiting for that because you are stuck in this bubble at the moment. And I think it has made people a lot more aware. I mean, just from that article you sent through, Fran, the Business of Fashion, the State of Fashion report, when it said about consumers now in a recent survey, I think it was 65% of them said they'll cut back on consumable goods in terms of like clothes and accessories and stuff, but only 40% will cut back on food and shopping, that kind of thing. So there's definitely, I feel there's definitely going to be a shift in terms of how people buy, and more so a case of conscious buying. And also on the flip side of things, it's hard to differentiate, because when you see the news, especially we were just speaking about off camera about like Primark and that, for example, it puts people in a different light, because it's like you say, all shops had queues because Primark is associated with fast fashion and not having an online store and people queuing up for it. It kind of changes the perception of consciousness in a way.
Absolutely.
So I think the biggest thing for me in terms of purchasing over this has been value, for sure. A change in value and a change of mindset and how much this can do for me, what I'm buying, for sure.
Value as in output versus usage type thing.
Exactly, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's almost like sort of what we used to call the kind of fashion terms like cost per wear, but it's like cost per use, isn't it? It's like something that's lifelong and actually add something to your life, like Dwayne's saying, like that kind of health and fitness, and both of you are saying health and fitness. And actually, it's the same with you with the kind of food. It's nourishing your children. It's nutrients. And I think also that's been quite interesting thinking about what people have been buying in terms of food. And maybe at the start went a little bit nuts on the kind of M&Ms or whatever, but then towards the end I started thinking about, you know, sort of macronutrients and looking more at nutrition and kind of how that makes us feel a bit better as well. But I was thinking about like things that I've done differently, and the same, I haven't bought clothes, but I mean that's something that I was doing before. I wouldn't buy new anyway. I was only buying from charity shops, and I think in a way when I think about when they closed, I wondered if I was using charity shops as just another way to get my kind of fashion fix. And actually, it's just as bad that the psyche is still there. So it has been interesting coming to terms with no new clothes, you know, not even thrifted ones. But I think probably the thing that stood out the most to me is buying a paper. Like, it's mad because
a newspaper.
Yeah, I've been buying a newspaper because I can't engage with like social media at the moment. It's all a bit too much. I don't know why things are directed to me. I can't work out the algorithm. I don't know what's the truth. And I mean, you get the same issue with print media, but you can just turn the page or whatever. But I feel like the other thing that's really sort of hit me hard is I used to read the news on my phone in the morning, and I've noticed that over this time there's just too much digital. There's just too much screen time in my life. So I've been turning to things like having the radio on instead of, you know, the TV at times, or, you know, reading a paper instead of reading on social media. And I feel like for me, that's this kind of like almost push back against everything being screen based. You know, I don't know if anyone's done these kind of like Zoom parties with your mates and stuff or whatever. And I feel like gradually those have just become really unsavoury as well, because they're just not the same. And it's that kind of like, I know, thirst for something that's like real life. So I feel like it's the same thing with like print media for me. Like I just need something out of my day that isn't on a screen. And so I'm sort of taking bits out of that. So
I suppose that, yeah. But I mean, I think, yeah, so, you know, there is that curve, isn't there? There's the sort of cycle of 3 months.
Yeah.
And they say that when you do things for 3 months, they actually, you know, they become a habitual rather than, you know, like a fad type thing. And I think there is that struggle of, well, this is great, like the work life. Yeah, I think it's great that we've moved more digital and that it's, you know, the working from home and all that kind of stuff, which I know we're going to expand on, but I just, yeah. And then, but it can't all be on that space, you know.
Yeah.
I think and there is that digital fatigue that people are. If you've noticed in the last sort of 2-3 weeks, that sort of curve is like, you know, those Zoom calls that you're having with your mates every other night, they've sort of gone. It's like, I don't want to because my eyeballs can't take it anymore. You know, I just need a bit of quiet time and a bit of still time, you know. So Louis and Toyin probably get out on their bike. I mean, I know Toyin does running and everything like that as well. You know, sometimes I just have to run out the door and just, you know, I will listen to something. I know you'll take the mickey out of me, but I love my audio books and podcasts and stuff like that. So I do like listening to stuff, or the radio. I'm a big, you know, I listen to the radio in the day. So yeah, I generally don't have TV apart from maybe in the evenings. But generally I will listen to something just so that I can sort of do something or not, you know, engage. But yeah, I think there is that sort of fatigue, and you can see the switch already. People sort of getting out more, and the resistance since the weather's got a bit worse. How people actually didn't notice how much they were enjoying the outside and all of that kind of stuff. And I think just sort of a point that popped in my head when you were talking about, I think it is the simplicity. Like I can see it through the kids, you know, when you have kids, you see things in a completely different way, and it is just that simplicity of being. You don't have to be everywhere, you don't have to be switched on the whole time, and just going for a walk around the block, that was a novelty. You know, we'd never have just walked around the block, we'd have always gone to a park, we'd gone to somewhere, we'd go you know, it'd always have to be a destination. You know, whereas when we sort of first were really allowed out but not, we just, you know, we used to go around for a little walk around the block, and that was, you know, that was really good, you know. That was really nice because it wasn't, you know, hassle. Or the other day we went puddle jumping just around the streets, you know, and it wasn't anything. We didn't go anywhere special to go puddle jumping. We were just trying to find dirty London puddles, you know. It didn't matter, but it was just the fact that those sort of simplicity things, you know, and none of the trees have been culled back because they can't come and cut them. So they're all like massive and bushy. It's just really small things that you sort of, you know, all of that kind of thing. And that side, I think, has overtaken the sort of social, personal, digital side. Yeah. But then equally, I'm fully grateful for it because, you know, my mum comes up once a week to see the girls, and, you know, they're missing each other desperately. So 2-3 times a week, because we've got the digital, they're able to have their time together. So it's a real, you know, it's finding the right sort of balance, I think.
Yeah, it's finding that balance, isn't it? Yeah. Sorry, Fran, you were saying.
No, go ahead, Lou.
Yeah, I would just agree. It's kind of, as you say, I remember when it first started, you said that everyone was doing quizzes and they were having their questionnaires and Zoom parties and stuff. But like you said, that it comes down to novelty, because we haven't had a situation like this before. We maybe never will again in our lifetime. So it's that, as you say, it's that 3-month cycle. It comes back to, it's kind of, and then there will be something else. And I think it's been so easy to just fall into, even though you're working from home, and so you can work from home, you kind of decide your own hours in a way, take lunch when you want. I find that you work longer because you don't have that thing of, I'm going to get there for this time, okay, my train comes at this time, I'm going to leave at this time, because you don't have anywhere to go as such. So like you say, just going for a 10-minute walk or something just breaks it up, and it kind of breaks that cycle. I mean, I try to go every day after work, even just for a walk across the park or around the block, just because if not, I don't think I'd ever leave a screen, whether it's a laptop or a tablet or a phone. you're always engaged, and the scary thing is you can't help it, and you don't realize how dependent you are on it. Just for my worst one has been TikTok over the past few months.
Oh
Like,
my god!
I got it as a, I
Talk about
got
that.
yeah, I got it just thinking, oh, like it's
Lost
okay.
5
Like,
hours, I lost 5 hours of my life the other night.
it's honestly, the algorithm is scary. Like, you go on there, watch it, and think it's a load of rubbish, and all of a sudden you're watching all these dances people are doing, and you're 2.5 hours deep into it, and again, that's
an
like,
incredible concept, isn't it?
yeah,
I don't think there's been any kind of social media that has just like can take time like that. It's insane.
But even with things
there was a point
like
in lockdown where I was kind of like, I'd literally lost 5 hours of my life, and then kind of just found all these videos and just like laughing out loud at like 3 o'clock in the morning. My neighbours must have thought I was insane. And I downloaded all these videos and sent them to my friend next. And I was like, oh my god, you're so got to watch these videos. My friend's like, I think you need to get off TikTok. And I think,
yeah, I think we need to have a
leave your
chat.
house. And I was like, oh, okay.
Like an intervention. But even like, I was talking to someone about TikTok, like the whole digital engagement in TikTok the other day, and like I saw an advert on TikTok the other day. I think it was a new Dua Lipa song, and they'd actually used, I think her name's Charlie D'Amelio, one of the famous TikTok influencers, and she's actually performing the dance for the song in a video. So it's like people are literally releasing songs now so that they become big on TikTok solely, and they grow from there. And it's just crazy, like you say, Charlotte, how it's one platform within the space of what's been a few months, probably out for longer, but has become more apparent in the last few months, has just like grabbed everyone like that. It's scary.
Yeah. That's what I find so interesting about this whole thing, because I feel like in one moment I feel like we've been pushed into 2030 like for good things for some reason, you know, like in terms of like teaching online and stuff. There's things that have just been released and sort of taking the bull by the horns, and that's been a great thing, and it's maybe dispelled some fears about moving more digital and pushed certain industries forward in a good way. But I always feel at the same time we've gone to 1930 as well, because that idea of, you know, going for a walk, I was thinking the other day, I'd do the same walk every day, and I was thinking the last time I've done something like that, walking so repeatedly, was when I used to walk to and from school. And I used to know absolutely every house, every front garden, everyone's front door, and I used to just kind of like take all that stuff in and not really think about it, but know it, you know, absolutely. It was part of what my day was, and that comfort level of my local area. And I find that localism aspect and that idea of maybe how our lifestyles and our living lifestyles and how we connect with our outdoor spaces as much as we connect with these kind of interior worlds like TikTok the same way. We've got these like two opposite connections now. And, you know, I read something really interesting the other day about how, you know, with sort of big employers like Barclays and Twitter all kind of decamping out of that kind of office central lifestyle and working from home, working from anywhere, working from home forever being a viable concept, you do wonder what's going to happen to city living, you know, places like London, real metropolis places that, you know, whole industries are built up around people commuting into them every day. You know, the placement of Pretz, the placement of Starbucks, all that kind of stuff is all totally based on that idea of the commute, which, you know, was huge in this century. And I just wonder about if we go back in time as well, and that idea of the importance of the community and the importance of the local area, and maybe, you know, the high street almost having almost a heyday because of this, because people just won't want to go into town or have the need to. You know, how does that change the customer as well? Our living, our how we move.
One of the
I think I have quite. Yeah, I have maybe toy and cinema as well, because we both live in London. So it's quite a different. So I sort of see it from, you know, I've been living in London since a few years, and free, you know, social, and then with kids as well. So I kind of can see both sides. I think when you propose this question, I completely get it. Jim and I had a very conversation. We're like, you know, we could just be anywhere really. You know, we've got this house here, we could have that house there. You know, it doesn't really matter. He can work from home. I could, you know, whatever. And we have talked about it, obviously. And then we were just like, oh, but it's not just about the work, is it? It's not just about being at home and working. It's about the infrastructure. So you suddenly look at environments, and you look at schools, and you look at, the transport and accessibility. Yes, I think there is a shift in transport, but at some point that will either, minimalise or change or evolve, into a very different thing, but it's still going to exist because it's a massive part of our infrastructure. In what way? Who knows? And just the general accessibility and the way it's been set up. So I do agree with you, and a lot of our friends around here that haven't got a garden, for instance. They did. It was just before half term or Easter, so it was just around that time. So they'd already booked somewhere in the UK to go and stay. So they went and extended, and so they had that space. So I do get it, and I've sort of personally experienced that. But when you spoke to me about it, I was like, no, I get it. I thought that it's not just about the work.
Yeah.
It is also about all those other infrastructures around the area that impact why people live in these situations. And then I took it into the retail, which to link those as well. And I think there is going to be a shift there, because I think we're going to go probably a bit later on, and I'll let everyone else have their views on the city quitting. But the cities are always going to be a focus. And I think what we'll do is we'll get rid of the peripheral, tinier, smaller cities or bigger towns that were sort of like being just added and added and added. And because I think if there's going to be retail experience, which we'll speak about in a bit, it's going to be, naturally it's going to be in those cities, because they are the meccas of where people come to from, they travel to, regardless of how they do it. And I think it's a better investment, I guess, for companies to take the odds on that than it is on the smaller high streets. I do think, though, the secondary high streets and that sort of more village feel, if that's done correctly and that's done well, that could be a really effective market. That brings back to that simplicity of, food supply chains there's going to be massive issues with all of that. And you can see it around here. I think it's been amazing. I'm quite near sort of Covent Garden Market, and all the sort of London Borough market and all that, and a lot of those are trade. And we've got loads of little pockets under arches around Clapham, all that kind of stuff. And all of them put out posts on the old Facebook Mamas Networks and said, basically, we've got loads of food that we would usually do for trade. Come and get a veg basket, we'll do delivery. So they all turned their business, and people have now sort of got back into that, when there was all that sort of the first panic buying. And they had all this produce. Jamie Oller's done something similar, hasn't he, with all the local produce, saying, please keep the suppliers, because we need to keep the local suppliers. So I do think there is a growth market in that sort of local niche, and the simplicity of just going from, toying with our sewing machine, she'll be out selling face masks, do you know what I mean? I'll have one. So I do think there's that going to be, I think it's going to be almost like two extremes. It's like the high gloss experience, and then I think it's quite the bit like you're saying, the TikTok and the 1930s walk. I think, because my neighbour is 90, and he's every week, which you'd never, I know Alan is lovely, and we've lived here for quite a few years, but every Thursday he drops through his list, his shopping list through the door, and then I make sure that it's on my online order for, so every week we've been doing that, and I've kept all the receipts actually, but that's that sort of twist of that digital and then this 1930s living. So you just wouldn't do that before,
No.
And he asked me to stop the other day, and I was like, Alan, we don't need to stop. And he goes, there's no real reason. Things are a bit heavy. And I was like, that's fine, Alan. So we're just going to carry on now. So that's something that we'll carry on. So there is that divide, and I think it is that if it's done well and it's done in a really considered way, I think there's an opportunity to sort of really, kickstart that sort of local feeling of village wherever you are, and then that sort of big experience in retail. But that's
it's true.
I like the idea of meeting local. I think at the moment, with what seems like everyone's going digital, everyone's going online just to kind of make up the difference they would have lost if they were just simply physical. I think, like you say, it's important that, and I think you're right, they will thrive, these more small towns and local places. I know for one, my friend's brother has a fast food burger kind of company, and because of obviously people not being able to go to store, they've transformed it into like a sister brand, which is a butchery. So they would deliver the meats and stuff they'd normally use. So stuff like that. But also that was the first thing they put it out on was social media, Facebook, Instagram. So it's that fusion of meeting somebody locally but using the digital aspect. And I think that we need to focus on that, because I don't think it should be a case of, right, because we're making losses physically, let's just go online, because I don't think that's the answer. I don't think you're going to make nearly as much profit margin online if you're solely physical focused. And I don't think it's a quick fix either, because if your target market and your demographic aren't online, like so if you had older customers who maybe go to a butcher to get their local meat, or their local pharmacist or their local opticians or whatnot, and you suddenly went online and done it that way, you'd lose a lot of consumers, I think, because they value that personable experience and that human touch. So I think as much as it is important, like you say, with your neighbour, kind of digital aspects and keeping it going and helping out that way, but at the same time, it shouldn't be a case of one leap to another, because there's going to be. I just don't think that's the simple fusion of it. I don't think that's the right answer to it.
No, you're right, because he goes up every week to the market stall to get his veg.
Yeah.
I've never got him many veg, because that is part of his, that is part of his week, to do that sort of, he has certain destinations that are, the butcher, the veg, the plant, and it's really important that those aspects are still there, definitely. Yeah.
I think it's quite interesting thinking about that idea, and it sort of brings me to that kind of other thing we were talking about was the in-store experience, because I think the one thing that those kind of more counter-based stores like sort of old-fashioned butchers and grocers, they can offer the no-touch experience, because you go into supermarkets, and no word of a lie, I stood behind a woman the other day, and she picked up every single onion before she picked up the one she wanted to put in her basket, and I'm thinking, okay, so I've just had to queue outside for God knows how long, Well, this is it. I've had to queue outside for God knows how long, and bless, the supermarket are probably trying to do as much as they can. But quite frankly, that is going on because they're too big. They can't do a counter-based service. And I'm thinking that's also something that's going to massively impact the customer, is just wanting to shop in a different way, and no touch-based shopping where there's someone in control that takes on the full health and safety, including the gloves, etc., and provides you. They're the one in the shop picking the stuff for you and asking what you want in kind of an old-fashioned greengrocer way. There's this kind of really interesting niche for that, alongside the idea of localism, alongside that idea of people maybe not wanting to travel, maybe wanting to go on their bike and get something. And the idea of nutrition as well, like people wanting to take control of, spending a bit more on maybe food bill than they normally would. And it kind of also bleeds into that idea of experiential as well. I feel like the novelty, and that might be the problem here, it might wear off, but that idea of going into a store that's different, or actually spending a whole morning going to the butcher, the fishmonger, is convenience everything now, kind of.
Well, it takes that long to go to the supermarket.
Yeah, nowadays, yeah.
Yeah, it's not. You just can't pop in for anything, can you? Like Toya was saying. Yeah.
So I think what it had, as we was kind of saying, I think one of the things that has happened throughout all this is there has been an increase in drive towards quality. And actually I was watching that programme on BBC Two last night on how Britain shops or something. It was talking about, covering how the supermarkets have adapted in the light of COVID and their supply chains and what people buy and stuff like that, and how the supermarkets themselves were, I don't know, they didn't really give much thought about, well, maybe they did give a lot of thought about, the quality of their ingredients and so forth, but because, COVID kind of impacted and the fishermen weren't able to export, because I think the fisheries export around about 73 to 80% of all their stock to European Union. They had nowhere, 70% of their sales just lost overnight, from the restaurants and through exporting. So they ended up kind of selling to the supermarkets. So now the supermarkets are selling much better and higher quality ingredients, and are kind of creating new marketing messages around, people buying better and still being able to, if you're not being able to kind of go out to your local restaurants and so forth, you can still have that kind of level, that that quality kind of experience, but just have it at home, but just buy, from the supermarket, so to speak. But also, for me as well, kind of, through now having a bike, even I'm kind of I haven't been to a big supermarket the whole of COVID, and I have been literally shopping at the corner shop at the end of the road, which is kind of like, where I live, every shop's a supermarket. But also kind of going off and scouting out new places, and I've got friends from like lots of different countries, and it's like, tell me where the Asian food shop is, so I can go and buy dim sum. And so I got on my bike the other day and went down to Holloway Road, and again, it's nice because you've got these nice little independent shops, but it doesn't have the queues, and it's very authentic, and fresh products, so to speak. And I'm quite enjoying this whole kind of experience, exploring this new exploration of food that I'm having, rather than just going into a supermarket and being told I need to buy this and this, going to new places and looking in the freezer and going, well, what does any of this mean? I think I've had one of those, and I've had one of those, because it's all got the Chinese or Asian kind of writing all over it. But but yeah, it's just kind of trying new things. But that's what's been great.
Yeah, but that's what you'd usually do in a restaurant as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest shifts was when we went, to weekly online shopping. I mean, I've been doing it anyway for ages, but it was never always the full thing. We'd always go out, or there'd be a multiple of channels of sort of food. And suddenly I was like, that's a big bill. And then I just thought, actually, it's not, is it? It's just because it's in one massive chunk rather than in, and you suddenly, so what you would go and spend in a restaurant to experience, that you've gone into a shop and you've gone and explored, and it's, it is like an experience currency, which is something it's just like all these things that we were sort of really belting towards at really quite a fast pace. It was like experience and experiential, and everything was like doof doof doof, and it's like, actually we are doing all of those things, but in a very sort of flipped way completely. So it's always that contrast of the real and the slow, but then the digital and the hyper. It's a very it's kind of like just sort of put a massive split down the middle and a break on, but actually that is an experience. You've had an experience currency just there, and it was experiential, and but it wasn't how we've sort of been drummed in for the last few years, what experiential and experience currencies are. It's really interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's just us all,
And
Exactly.
it ties back to that idea of local again, because it's like, especially nowadays, when you say experiential, it seems like everyone's doing experiential to follow the trend. And I think sometimes experiential can be tied in with, has to be digital, has to be like AR, VR kind of forward thinking. But like you say, if you focus on that local element with Toy and going to local international supermarkets, they in themselves, as you say, offer that experiential. It's something we wouldn't normally do. We'd normally go to a Tesco Express or something to get a quick meal after work. But instead you're going there. And I think that's where these local international stores will really benefit from it, because it's that thing of going and learning, and like Toyin said, you might not know what it is, but you cook with it and you try it out and you recommend it to a friend. So I as you say, Charlotte, I think it's important that we remember we've always had that experiential aspect. It's just in maybe a more subtle way than we've maybe realised. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think we're appreciating it more, aren't we? We're suddenly starting to see in our doldrum days, we've got experiences for what they are. I mean, I'm sitting above what can only be described as a home brewery right now. Adam's got 2 kegs on the go, and that is where our dining room is at the moment. And then when he's not brewing beer, he's baking bread. And it's been quite a figure of fun between us. But actually, it's that idea of you've got more time perhaps, and also that idea of how do you get the most out of that food shop? Okay, well, I'm going to, instead of getting the finished article, I'm going to make the article out of all of the ingredients, which, adds a few bit of money to the shopping bill perhaps, but actually takes a few hours off the day. And that's probably the balance that we're all kind of thinking about now,
So in terms of that, adding more to your bill, actually you get more out of it, because rather than spending, I don't know, £3, £4 on a sourdough bread, you're buying all the ingredients and you're able to make like 6 sourdough bread.
Yeah.
The same kind of, so it kind of, and again, kind of comes back to, kind of getting value out of all our purchases in a different, and kind of thinking about it in a different kind of way, rather than just that convenience of just going to shop and buying it, we kind of got more thought and going, actually, I'm going to make it, and I can make 6 teas for the price of what it would cost me just for one. If you can get hold of flour.
Yeah.
Yeast, flour. I've got loads of flour. I can't find any yeast. I need to skim some off of Adam's. My mum did it because my mum doesn't do. She does sort of some things online, but not food shopping. I think she has through this, and she couldn't find any flour to make her sort of stash. My dad's got an allotment, so we get quite. There's always a freezer load of batch stuff. So she couldn't get any flour, so she went direct to the mill, found some, was delighted, and then this massive sack turned up on the
like a concrete bag.
She had no idea what the weight was, but now she's actually direct from the mill a whole sack of flour.
That's brilliant.
You can't put that in the top shelf, it'll break it off the wall.
That's a proper wartime, isn't it? She's actually got a sack. And I said, have you got a scoop?
I love it.
Brilliant. Make it for the street rather than just for herself.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Don't worry, everything comes in batches. Courgette cakes get stocked up for the year. We'll get to share the love of courgette cakes around here. I think that one of the things that I found out about this week, which I just think is sort of switching, I suppose, into, bringing all those points together. Have you heard of Marsky?
No.
Right. So it's such a brilliant. This is kind of like how the Future Lab sort of describes macro trends reveal how consumers are responding to the global drivers of change and all that kind of stuff. And it's all about that consumer drive and experience and the data that goes with that. And it's kind of what we're talking about. It's that sort of contrast of the consumer driving the market. So what they did was he's been making masks. Toyin, it's going to be on you, Ben, right? So he's been making really basic cotton masks to help support the NHS, when everyone started sewing. And then he thought, what else could I do? And he completely entrepreneurial, and he said, I'm going to make them into little packs and put them in vending machines.
Nice.
Around, you have to wear them on travel now. They're compulsory.
Yeah.
You're either fined or you're not allowed on to travel. There's 10 around the UK. He couldn't find. Then he took it a proper entrepreneur. He couldn't find a vending machine that he looked into vending machines, and there wasn't one that would cater for that sort of size or whatever. So he's actually then made the vending machine for it, or with a company, and now there's 10 around the UK. So it's a UK-based company and it was never done with self-motivation. He gives 10% away to charity, and it was done so that people, children and adults, there's 2 sizes, and isn't that amazing? So it's that kind of unassuming entrepreneur that has which again I think comes back to that sort of conscious sort of decision making, and it came from the greater good. It came from the fact that it was like, people need access to masks that are, we know where they've come from, we know where they've been made, we know that, there's nothing, all of that kind of stuff, supply chain. And it was all coming from the right place. And suddenly out of a mad crisis, there's another, that's a new niche right now. He's just created a whole new niche of a market. So, and it's just incredible. Things like that I just find, I think it's just brilliant. The fact that he came up with the idea, then couldn't find the vending machine, and then sourced the vending machine.
Problem. I love that.
Here's the time for mad inventors, I think.
Yeah.
Come up with all those kind of things that people usually just laugh at. It's kind of like, actually, COVID has kind of, brought them into their own. Like, Marsky, I was watching a program the other day, and someone was kind of promoting this dog book. So,
Oh, yeah, I've seen that.
to get into doors and stuff, this some kind of plastic hook that his man was kind of like, and he was a bit of a mad inventor, kind of like, people need to open up doors, people need to be able to kind of get into places and, whatever else. Fair enough, it's not good for door knobs, but if you've got like a door kind of handle, then it was kind of like, and again, he was kind of donating X amount towards, the NHS and lots of charity causes, but it's kind of like, roll out the inventors.
Yeah, it's so exciting. Yeah.
It's time to be kind of exploring and finding new business opportunities to kind of work in this environment, because we don't know how long it's going to be around for, and it's global. It's not just local. it's global. You know, this is the whole world is looking for the same kind of solutions.
Well, it's like you with your kind of call out there for helmets. It's like there's whole new product lines that are basically not ever been tapped into or not ever been thought about. And it's like that needs to, you know, those things, changes in lifestyle, changes in what people are buying. There's going to be different product categories, and people are going to be so entrepreneurial about that as well, which can be quite exciting.
Yeah, for me with the helmet, it just, you know, and actually, for me, that kind of came around. I was having a conversation with a friend about it the other day, and actually, me getting a bike and starting to kind of pedal around made me realise and quite conscious that I don't see that many black people, apart from men, I don't see that many black women riding bikes. And I don't know, you know, please respond in the comments, but it kind of made me think, why they're not enough, why don't I see enough and more black women riding bikes? And when I'm kind of riding around, and I'm being quite safe because I'm just kind of going around the quiet lanes and stuff at the moment, you know, people look at me to say, what are you doing on a bike? But I just feel like maybe that's one of the reasons why there aren't enough ethnic minority or family people wearing bikes, because we have a whole kind of hair situation going on. Which again, I was kind of talking to my friends the other day, and one of my friends works for a well-known newspaper. She's like, maybe you might want to write an article about that. And then it kind of got me kind of researching online. And it seems, you know, not that many people listen about it, but it was kind of like, how do you overcome, you know, the whole...
Yeah, because it needs to... It's one thing having the flexibility of the inside bit, but that's not going to stay safe if it's too wide.
It depends on what we do with our hair.
Exactly.
My hair is out. So if I've got my hair out, then the helmet's sitting up here. But also, I was kind of looking at, you know, the styles, and just, you know, all bike helmets are designed for Western hair. So it's straight, flat hair. You know, because all the pictures of models, they've got their hair down. And, you know, for me, I can't kind of go out with my hair down because it's out here. So then I have to pull it back. But even so, it's just massive and puppy. Or I need to do something like this. But if we're always changing our hair, then that means I have to have like 6 or 7 different bike helmets.
Hair helmets. Literally have hair helmets.
So, you know, I'd love to hear from anybody who's got some ideas or thoughts about this, because I really do feel like it's kind of like, you know what, if there was a solution to bike helmets for people of colour and ethnic minorities, then I think we would see a lot more people riding bikes.
Yeah, we need to get our students. That's one of our summer challenges. That's a summer task. That's a really good point. Yeah.
I think that's a nice thing to take away from it in current circumstances where it's awful what's been happening in the past few months. It's nice to try and take a positive, and like you say, because you're out riding a bike, it's made you more conscious of your surroundings and being aware of stuff. So it's opened up these new niches that you probably wouldn't have thought about before because of the circumstances. So it's nice that from this, as Charlotte was saying with masking, and like you say, designing other cycling helmets, it's kind of, there's new opportunities, and that probably were there before but weren't as recognised because there wasn't the awareness, there wasn't the need for awareness as such, because we were so in tune with our daily lives. So it's definitely a summer task. Definitely a summer task.
Okay.
Yeah, summer task for the students.
Yeah. We're going to add that to the list. Yeah.
I love it. That and the jingle, please.
Like the jingle. Love that. Just 2 extreme things. Give us a jingle and then come up with a helmet. Yeah.
Love it.
I'm going to have my hair like this most probably like 6 weeks or so. But it will eventually go back to normal. So it will be out at some point like that. And that's the kind of helmet that I'd like to design for.
Because it's about that sort of, it's creating the space, isn't it, of compression. It makes it safe. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Okay. Well, that's okay.
Let's hope by the end of this series we see you in a proper fitting cycling helmet then, Toyin.
Yeah.
That can be. It's got
to look. I mean, you know, bearing in mind we're talking about, you know, all that sort of thing. It's still got to look good, yeah, guys.
Well, that's the thing. I'm kind of like, you know, I'm proper. All my friends are kind of like, your bike is really nice, but it really needs some stickers on it because someone's going to nick it. And I'm like, no, I don't want no stickers on my bike. It is just
afternoon B podcast up the frame. That's what we need.
Yeah, exactly. And here's the list of things that we need people to create from our podcasts. Jingles, cycle helmets.
Here's an idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're like an an ideas factory. I love it. Yeah.
Right. Well, what's up next week, guys?
Who's on?
I think it's Charlotte next week.
It's me. I swapped with Louis. So just I would like to talk about sort of the kindness economy. That's my vibe, and how all of this shift is starting to sort of redesign sort of leadership and redefining leadership and sort of businesses and all of that kind of stuff. That's kind of what I would like to talk about next week. If you're up for it, gang.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Gives
There's
people a
lots
chance
of that
to
going
have a
on.
look as well. Students or whoever's watching, give them a chance to find articles they might find relevant.
Yeah.
And drop them
Yeah,
in.
I mean, there's loads of stuff. Mary Portis does loads of things about sort of the kindness economy. She's brilliant at that kind of. Her approach is very professional, but it's also, really approachable. I think, it's not, and also obviously there's loads of stuff going on at the moment with the New Zealand Prime Minister. She's shaking things up.
Amazing.
Oh, love her. She's exactly. She's really shaking things up, and I think there's a big shift of movement. It's something that there's been little pockets of it, but I think this is really, when you said earlier about 2020 to 2030, Fran, I think this is one of those that I think we've got an opportunity to shake it up some more. So yeah. So
I think it's probably businesses. It's kind of happening in their
Yes.
messaging and what they're doing as well.
They're coming from the right place. Yeah.
We'll tune in next week, guys, for that. And
Yes. Great.
that's it. That's it for today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Posting
Fran.
today,
Thanks
Fran.
for that, Fran.
That's all right.
Thanks everyone
Well done.
also for, again, as always, wonderful. Thanks everyone for tuning in. As you say, you're now aware that next week is Kindness Economy, so if you find any articles, insights, stuff you want us to talk about, you know where we are on the socials, on the Be Connected site. Feel free to drop us a comment, send us an email, say, look, found something great that you guys can maybe speak about. Let us know what you think about it as well. Equally, we'd love to hear from you guys. But for now, I think we'll leave it there. I think the message there is support your local stores, go to your butcher, go to your greengrocer,
Find your helmet.
and buy and design a
That's
design
not
a
the
helmet
message.
for
The
Toyin.
message is find Toyin a helmet.
This is serious. This is serious stuff.
It is safety first. I'm a stickler for safety. Yeah, can't have Toyin out on a bike without a helmet on.
Just on quiet routes, so not too near the roads and stuff, or the big busy.
Okay, that's all right then, Toyin. Noted.
Yeah.
That's good. Right, well, thanks again, guys, and we will see you same time next week for the Kindness Economy.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Bye.
Take care.